Tonight, we begin with a development that has sent shockwaves through Moscow and left Vladimir Putin facing what some Russian insiders describe as the most serious political jolt of his career. Ukraine has taken the war into an entirely new dimension by actively identifying and targeting FSB agents inside Russia. This is not rumor, not speculation. It is a direct challenge to the very security apparatus that Putin has relied on for more than 2 decades to maintain power. This move fundamentally alters the strategic landscape. For the first time, Ukraine has reached deep into Russian territory, exposing vulnerabilities within the FSB and embarrassing a regime that prides itself on complete control, surveillance, and intimidation. Tonight, we break down how Ukraine managed to pull this off, why the FSB never saw it coming, and what this means for the future of Putin's political stability as the war he unleashed begins to turn inward. A direct hit on the heart of Russian state power. Ukraine's decision to go after FSB operatives on Russian soil is one of the boldest intelligence maneuvers of the entire conflict. This is not a battlefield strike. It is an intelligence operation aimed at the core of Russia's internal security system. The message is unmistakable. The war is no longer contained within Ukraine's borders. Russian power centers are no longer untouchable. For decades, the FSB has been portrayed as Russia's all-seeing, all-knowing guardian of stability, able to detect threats before they surface. But with near-surgical precision, Ukrainian intelligence has pierced that aura of invincibility. The shock inside the Kremlin is enormous. Because if Ukraine can identify and track high-level FSB agents inside Russia, the obvious question becomes, what else can they access? What else can they expose? This is where the political panic begins. A crisis of confidence inside Moscow. Putin's image, both domestically and on the world stage, is built on control. Absolute, unshakable control. He claims to command a security network capable of detecting and crushing threats long before they emerge. But this operation exposes a blind spot so large that it undermines the mythology of Russian state power. If the FSB, Putin's most feared and loyal institution, can be penetrated, then no one inside the system can feel secure. Inside Moscow's halls of power, the psychological impact is enormous. There are whispered meetings, sudden personnel reshuffles, urgent efforts to trace the source of the breach, a rising fear that the enemy may already be inside the walls. For Putin, this is more than an intelligence failure. It is a political earthquake. A blow to the FSB's reputation. In authoritarian systems, reputation is power. And the FSB's power comes not just from capability, but from perception. For years, the agency has thrived on the belief that it cannot be infiltrated or touched. Ukraine shattered that illusion. This is not simply a tactical embarrassment. It is a reputational catastrophe for the Kremlin. Once a security agency like the FSB is exposed as vulnerable, doubt spreads quickly. Trust erodes. Paranoia accelerates. Officials begin asking dangerous questions. Who allowed this to happen? What systems failed? Who can no longer be trusted? And most dangerous of all, is this just the beginning? In systems built on fear and secrecy, those questions are destabilizing. Why targeting the FSB is a direct strike on Putin himself. Ukraine's choice to hit the FSB, not the military, was deliberate. The military fights battles. The FSB protects Putin's throne. To strike the FSB is to strike the mythology of Putin's unbreakable control. Inside FSB offices in Moscow, the atmosphere is tense. Conversations suddenly go quiet. Officials begin watching their colleagues more closely. The fear is no longer just what Ukraine might do, it's what Ukraine might already know. How deep is the penetration? What operations are now compromised? What secrets might be exposed next? For an authoritarian system, those questions are far more dangerous than tanks or missiles. How this shakes Putin's political foundation? Putin's power is not based on elections, economic success, or even military strength. It is built on the perception that he alone controls Russia's security state. When Ukraine exposes vulnerabilities inside the FSB, it essentially strikes at the foundation of Putinism. Inside Moscow's political elites are already recalculating. They watch Putin's tone, his confidence, his explanations. And what they see is a leader who has been caught off guard. That perception is dangerous. In authoritarian systems, political erosion begins quietly, not with open rebellion, but with subtle shifts. They gather more information. They explore alternative loyalties. They begin wondering if the era of Putin is entering a vulnerable phase. Once that doubt begins, it rarely reverses. The collapse of Putin's public narrative. For years, Putin has insisted that Russia is safe, secure, insulated from chaos. He has painted the war in Ukraine as something distant, something that does not affect ordinary Russians. But Ukrainian operations inside Russia destroy that narrative. Suddenly, Russia does not look invulnerable. Suddenly, the war does not look far away. Suddenly, the Kremlin does not look in control. Competence is currency in authoritarian regimes. Lose it, and loyalty begins to crack. A war spilling into Russia. Ukraine's expansion of intelligence operations into Russia marks a turning point in this conflict. It forces the Kremlin into a defensive posture. It stretches Russian resources. It disrupts Russia's confidence in its own security systems. Most importantly, it sends a message that Ukraine is no longer simply defending, it is dictating the tempo of the conflict. Ukraine has shown it can strike at the systems that launched the war, not just the soldiers who fight it. This is why the Kremlin is rattled. A dangerous new phase for Putin. The breach inside the FSB has exposed Putin to an unprecedented level of internal vulnerability. For the first time in decades, Russian elites are seeing a leader who cannot protect even his most loyal enforcers. That realization spreads quickly, quietly, but quickly. This is the kind of crisis that authoritarian rulers fear the most. A crack inside the security services. When the FSB is shaken, the entire system becomes unstable. Paranoia rises. Trust collapses. The political atmosphere turns heavy and uncertain. Ukraine didn't just breach an agency. It disrupted the rhythm of power inside Moscow. As of tonight, one fact stands out. Putin is facing a level of internal exposure and humiliation not seen in Russia for decades. Ukraine's pursuit of FSB agents inside Russia is more than a tactical success. It is a symbolic strike, one that pierces the myth of Putin's untouchable security empire. The consequences will stretch far beyond the battlefield. They reach into the Kremlin's political core, its confidence, and its carefully crafted illusion of control. This story is still unfolding, and its impact is only beginning to be felt.